Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 11 of Cards Chat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. On this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Tony Dunst. With close to $4 million in career tournament earnings, Tony has 2 World Series of Poker bracelets and a World Poker Tour main event title in his trophy case. Away from the felt, he's best known as the co-lead commentator for the WPT. A gentleman both at and away from the felt. Tony, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Cards Chat. I'm really happy to be speaking with you.
Thanks for having me on today, Robbie. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you? You doing all right?
I am, yeah. I'm here in Vegas, where I live, and we were talking about this before. You know, it's like the first day in 6 months that it's finally cooled down. It's finally like a cold day in Vegas after a summer that saw a whole bunch of like 115, 118. I don't know, you might use Celsius over there, and I don't even know how high that converts, but it's like 50 degrees or something. So it's pretty noticeable, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, here in Israel, it's like the same temperature, but with added humidity. So I always prefer the dry heat of Vegas. But it's good to get a little bit of a changing of the seasons. So I hear you with the good lower temperatures, and you're looking quite comfortable today. So that's a good thing.
Sure.
Obviously, you've been around in the poker world long enough that most folks already know you got your start online. That's where you made your name for yourself, and after that, you transitioned more into live poker, but obviously with the whole pandemic going on, it really pushed people back online again. This past summer, you won your second WSOP bracelet. Congratulations at the online summer series. I'm wondering, how did the win feel for you online versus winning the first bracelet that you had live, at the Rio?
It's funny. Winning this big one online felt a little more meaningful for me, because even though it was a second as opposed to a first, and everybody always wants to get their first, don't get me wrong. But I came up online. I've been playing online forever. I never really had like a truly big kind of what felt like, like a breakthrough or a 6-figure score online, despite basically doing it for almost 20 years or something, playing a whole bunch of Sundays where you're out there swinging at that size of a score. And so to finally get one was just super satisfying. Just like it felt like something I had been chasing for so long. I kind of hit. Whereas the first one that I won live, it was almost like after I had given up the pursuit of trying to grind my face off every summer and prioritize living life. That's actually when I won it. Like I did 10 straight years of come out to the World Series, play all the Hold'em events that I could or felt that I belonged in. Right. I come up empty, and then one summer I was like, screw it, I'm going to Europe, and then like showed up with like a week left in the World Series and just drilled a bracelet right before the main,
right.
Maximum late regging the turn. It just didn't really feel too earned the first time around, I guess you'd say. So
you're saying this is more satisfying, that it's sort of, I guess you never really lost your passion for playing online, but did this bracelet win give you, I think your video disappeared. There you are.
There we
Hello.
Go. There you go. People try to call me.
Oh, good. Did this bracelet win sort of like, I don't know, add some fuel to the fire to like keep grinding even harder online?
It was more like there had been a really strong fuel for about 18 months leading up to that, where at that time, I kind of looked at my Hendon Mom results, looked at my recent poker results, and was like, wow, I've really fallen off. Like I've let myself fall off in terms of sharpness of the game, and I need to reapply myself and get back to studying on a regular basis and asking a lot of questions and kind of like humbling myself to the process. And then seeing that we were going to have this opportunity to play a ton of poker online from our homes during the pandemic, I was like, okay, cool. This work won't go to waste. I'll still have an opportunity to materialize something big if I can. And like during that whole series, my life was poker, and I don't mean just playing. Like I would just wake up in the morning, get some exercise, and then immediately start studying. Take a little bit of a break before we play all night, and try and bug my friends to review hands with me. And so it just kind of felt like a lot of effort had paid off. Mm-hmm. But it's tricky in poker, man. There's so much luck involved. Like, of course. I can never really be too certain.
Of course, and when you're talking about, 10 summers at the Rio, and then finally you drill one, like that's obviously points to, hey, there's variance, just like in life as well, for sure. I was wondering, actually, you pointed out that you looked at your Hendon mob and that sort of got your fire going. Is it looking at your own results and saying, I want to be doing better? Or is it sort of like looking around and saying, okay, well, this guy just got a bracelet and this guy just got another high score. I want to keep up, with my peers. Which way was it that motivated you more?
I never felt too much of a like compare myself to my peers level of competition because how to put it, the variance is enormous, like I said earlier in poker. So like when people are winning things, sometimes it's because they're great players, sometimes it's because they're running especially hot during a short period. Mostly I just root for the people that I like and know to be nice people. Yeah. So when it comes to the fuel to push myself to study, it's more like looking at my own results and saying, am I still able to cut it at a high level? And if I'm going to be on the World Poker Tour talking about the game as the sort of expert analyst side of the coin alongside Vince and the humor that he brings, I really feel like I need to be able to walk the walk.
For sure. It's a really insightful comment. And of course, we're going to be doing plenty of talk about your role with the WPT later. About specifically the WPT, specifically, we're talking about online poker. And for people living in the States, the options for playing real money poker are limited unless you're living in Nevada, like yourself, or New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania. But the WPT, they do have something called Club WPT. And I imagine out there in the CardsChat community, our community, there may be some people who are unfamiliar with what Club WPT is, and they may not realize that they have an option, a great option, to play online poker through that platform. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that?
That's right. Club WPT, as opposed to being a full-blown real money poker site, is a subscription site where there are two levels of membership, one at about 25 and one at about 150. And you're playing for $100,000 in cash and prizes, including seats to live WPTs. And a great aspect to Club WPT is that it's widely available in the United States and as well as some other countries. Although a few states have conditions where, it's either unavailable or you have to take one of every 3 months off or something like that. Okay. For the most part, Club WPT is widely available in the United States, where our options for online poker can be pretty limited. So, and we've just got a great thing going on there with myself and all the other members of the WPT talent streaming our Club WPT sessions on the WPT Twitch channel, all week, not quite all week, we do 4 days a week, but, just kind of every single week, and have really built up a cool community of people who love poker, love hanging out and talking, in my case, like sports or gambling or even at, times politics, betting on all kinds of crazy prop bets, anything we can get in there. Like it's just a nice network to have.
That's awesome. And plus those 6-figure prize pool, $100,000, still competing for some good money there. Back in the day when you started, of course, you were known as Bond 18, but now on WSOP.com, where you won your bracelet, you're panoramic. So why the switch? Where did that name sort of come from?
It's a super dumb story. I was living in Panorama Towers at the time that I created the screen name. And it's like, they're asking you to create a name, and I like look up from my computer and look out a window, and I'm like, panoramic, just like the first thing you see in front of your face.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I mean, I heard actually there's a lot of professional poker players living in the Panorama Towers. You're still there now, or not anymore?
No, I have a house in Vegas now, but
nice.
for the entire existence of the Panorama Towers in Vegas, it's been home to probably more poker players at any given time than any other building, any other subdivision, anything like that.
Are there like sort of home games that go on among the pros over there?
There probably are. I feel like there was more so in the past when there was a large amount of people living in the building, but like I'm not really the cash game guy, you know. I'm not really part of, like, I've you know, here and there shown up to like the more home game, private game scene, but it's not my world within poker. And so yeah, I couldn't really tell you.
Okay, that's fair. Well, when you do play cash on occasion, do you have a particularly favorite room to play at in the city, or some favorite stakes? It's just sort of like keep your skills sharp, mix it up, and meet people, or it's like, you know, let's grind a little and sharpen my game.
For a while, it was very much grinding to, you know, try and make a living at it, make some decent money, and then also improve my game. Now, if I'm going to play cash, it's probably a mix of wanting like a social outlet for a session, or, you know, seeing a particularly good game at the stakes that are interesting for me, but like, because I don't play cash on a regular basis, I really feel against the other regs, I'm going to be at a pretty decent disadvantage. They're just going to get a lot of the details right that I'm not. And so for me now, if I'm going to play cash, yeah, like I said, probably just because, you know, I walked through the Aria poker room, I walked through, you know, Bellagio, Wynn, whatever it was, and I looked at a table and I was like, that's the lineup? Like, oh, I mean, I even have cash on me? Like, let's go, you know? That's probably how I end up in it now.
Of those three, do you have a particular favorite place to play?
I'd probably say Aria. I've just spent so much time there over the years. I know the staff pretty well.
Sure.
We at the WPT have held major events at Aria for a number of years now. It's just a beautiful property, super central in Las Vegas. But yeah, you know, those three I've spent a lot of good time. And, you know, just like props to Wynn for amping up their tournament schedule and their, you know, investment in building a poker room and the tournaments that they provide. You know, it's a pretty cool room for sure.
For sure. And I've got to give the shout out to the poker boss, Sean McCormick of Aria, a former guest here on the CardsChat Podcast. And a reminder to everyone out there either watching or listening, of course, this is episode number 11, but that means 10 great other episodes you guys can go ahead and listen to. Of course, you didn't always live in Las Vegas. Do you have perhaps a favorite place to live or that you've visited over your professional poker career?
It would be Melbourne, Australia to me. I first went down there for the Aussie Millions when it was like my break-in event, getting started in the poker world. And I was just like, you know, a 19, 20-year-old kid, just excited to see it all. And then I spent like 4 or 5 years living in Australia, a lot of it living directly across the street from Crown Casino.
Nice.
So same kind of thing where I just have a ton of memories there. And, you know, what's cool about Crown Casino is that it's a really nice property in the dead heart of a fun city to be in. Oftentimes, casinos, even if they're nice ones, can be pretty well removed from the heart of a city. You know, they're like, okay, well, we've got a casino here. It's just 30 minutes outside of town, right?
Right.
Whereas Crown is just like, boom, right in the middle, like directly across the river from the entire central business district, a short walk from all the sports that go on during the same time of the tournament. So it's just like a really cool experience down there.
Well, it's definitely on my bucket list to visit someday. I'm sure some of our members in the CardsChat forums are also sort of saying the same thing. And it's nice that Australia still welcomes you back. I believe you have an interesting story about overstaying one's visa, I believe, right?
Yeah, I know I did. I overstayed a student visa back when I was too young to realize that visas were a thing that you had to renew. And the immigration department was not pleased. So yeah, it took a few years worth of, I mean, like first I had to leave the country and was basically given like, a full-blown ban for a few years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then had, like, not like, you're banned for life kind of thing. They're just like, you broke the rules, you're banned for 3 years, and then you can apply or during this and that, after
Right.
it runs out. I ended up using an immigration lawyer to get that reduced to maybe like 18 months or something.
Sure, for good behavior.
And now
Right.
everything's cool when I go back and forth now. And well, this is of course pre-pandemic. They've
Sure.
been one of the strictest in all of this in terms of how they've approached the virus. But
Right.
but yeah, in normal times, it's now pretty smooth to get in and out of Australia because they've put everything online, for the most part. Like
Sure.
before you ever reach the airport, you've completed most of the paperwork. It's all pretty sweet there.
Yeah, and plus, worst case scenario you get, they say, "Hey, I know Lynn Gilmartin. She's gonna let me in, right?" So it's all good.
Worth a lot of cachet down there. You don't even know. She's just getting bigger all the time.
That's it. And of course, got to point out she was also a past guest here on the Cards Chat podcast. I think that was episode number 7. You guys can check that out. In that sort of same region of the world, I know you also spent a lot of time in Asia back in the day. Did you ever participate sort of in the high roller scene there? Were you witness to it or aware of it?
Not the caliber of high roller scene that has made, myths of guys like Tom Dwan or anybody that's gone over there and played for the insane nosebleeds. Like,
Right.
The highest stakes tournament that I did play a lot of the early poker tournaments in Macau and in China. Like basically for the earliest legal poker tournaments in China, like I think I might have been at the original one in Macau or something in oh God, 07, something like that.
Wow.
And I played a lot of the stars. I believe it was the APT. No, they weren't APT. They were AAPT.
APPT,
I believe.
right, yeah.
And they built up quite a schedule within the region for a while, but I believe also, and I haven't looked into it in a while, but I believe we're kind of here and there running into regulatory issues in various countries. Like not every country in Asia has completely opened up its doors to gambling, casinos, poker tournaments, things like that. And so I believe that as they went through the process of having this tour over the years, I think they were I believe this happened to numerous poker tours in Asia. They hit a variety of regulatory snags.
Sure. I know you guys, WPT did one in Japan recently. I know you'd been to, was it Vietnam, I think? I think it was Vietnam. Or Cambodia. Cambodia, right. You guys did a lot of stuff over there. It's pretty cool.
I've done WPT in Korea.
Wow. Oh,
yeah,
nice.
That was really cool. We were on their honeymoon island in Jeju.
Oh, wow. That sounds dreamy. Awesome. What was your favorite thing to do in Jeju besides play poker?
Bro, they had this. All right, let me think if I should tell this right. But this is true. So Jeju is their honeymoon island, right? And for whatever reason, they have a theme park's not quite the right word. It's like a statue park.
Okay.
It's dedicated to sex and sexual positions. And it's I know it sounds really random, and the park itself is totally random. It looks like how to put it? I don't know. It looks like if the Disney people were like, yes, and now we will create a sex park or something, and it would just be this wacky assembly of statues in various positions. But there's a real thing we were there in winter too, so some of the more it's kind of a summer themed island for the most part. A lot of it was shut down, but one day we just went to the park and took pictures there, and it was just as wacky as it sounds.
It sounds like a really interesting experience, and I guess giving at least one more reason for folks to visit Jeju someday. Of course, okay, let's go back to Australia, a little bit south of the equator. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that a little bit. Of course, it's one of the places where you've experienced tremendous success on the felt. You finished runner-up in the Aussie Millions main event, I think it was, I got here, 2016. Yeah. But if I recall correctly, there's an amazing story that almost didn't happen. And I've heard the story before. I'm a little rusty on the details. Maybe you can share that with us here at CardsChat.
Sure. So I guess the full story is that leading up to that event, for about a year and a half leading up to that event, I had been having a really bad time in poker in terms of my own results and my focus within the game. And I had kind of shifted a ton of my attention to playing daily fantasy sports. And so whenever I went and play poker, I found myself easily frustrated, not enjoying it, not really wanting to be there, and just kind of running bad too. And so I went down to the Aussie Millions for the first time in a few years, and was kind of prioritizing just hanging out with people, socializing, catching up with the people that I'd known when I used to live there. And I was in line to register the main event. I had 2 5K chips in my pocket, and I knocked one of them out of my pocket. It just kind of blended in with the carpet, went missing. They checked the cameras, couldn't find it. And I was just so tilted right off the bat. I was like, before we even started the event, I just threw $5,000 in a trash can, and I was only going to take half myself in this tournament to begin with. I'm tilted out of my mind and just like don't even want to be playing poker to begin with. Like, I'm done. And I just like walked out. Yeah, it's just like I really believe this, Robbie, that if you're not in the right mindset to play serious poker, especially tournament poker that is a marathon and not a sprint, like, don't do it. You just won't play well. If you get into any of these tough decisions where you need to make like a discerning fold, you probably just won't make it. It's really one of those things that I had to learn over time, that like, it's okay on the days that you just don't feel up to it to say no. Like,
Sure.
You're not obligated unless you're already deep in the tournament. So on this particular day, I really felt like I was not going to be able to play well. I was just super tilted. I didn't enjoy poker in general, and just left the casino. To hell with it. And went about my day and got pretty intoxicated that day, like I was, not like I sat around and did nothing.
Right.
And my friend Timex, who would, Mike McDonald, who had bought half of the action, is like kind of texting me throughout the day being like, hey, this is like one of the best events of the entire year. You should probably still play it while Reg is open. Like, if you're too tilted to even invest any of your own money in the event, like, I'll just free roll you and we can extrapolate the markup I was going to pay to the point where I would just be paying all of it and you would get what turned out to be like 17%. Right. I'm like, yeah, I'll think about it. And like 9 p.m. rolls around and I'm just kind of like bored and half drunk and being like, I'm going to lose some of Mike's money. I was like, that offer's still open, I'm going to lose some of your money. This is going to be hilarious. So I like went back and played, like hit a couple of hands and then, the night's over. And then you sleep off whatever mood you're in. You wake up the next day and you're like, I feel a little better. I'll go and play some decent poker. And in the biggest pot I played that day, I like two-outed somebody for a pile of chips and we both had big pairs. And it's like, okay, this is kind of going somewhere. Like day 3, by then you're just like into it. You're like, okay, I've got enough chips in a big tournament that my mindset is completely reset. Now I should really be taking this thing seriously. But I will say that for the remainder of that tournament, whenever I found myself in a marginal spot where I was like, I could do the careful thing or I could do the crazy thing. Mm-hmm. I thought, man, it's Mike's money. Let's do the crazy thing, right?
Amazing.
And that's exactly what I did. And I just kept winning my major pots. And, by the time we reached the final table, myself and Ari Engel just had a huge percentage of the chips. I ended up finishing second after a very long heads-up match to Ari. Mike got the bulk of the money, but I still won, 6 figures, basically trying to set my stack on fire in the Aussie Millions main event. So,
unbelievable.
There's a bittersweet ending there for you.
Right. I remember that heads up and like just not that there were 2 camps because both you and Ari are so beloved in the poker community, and it's just like it's so cool to see you guys playing heads up. And that story, if anything, it teaches us 2 very important things. Of course, like you said, guys, you don't have to, if you're not feeling the right mindset, don't show up to play. And the other one is, if you have a free roll from Mike McDonald, go ahead and set his money on fire, or at least go ahead and give it a shot. It's a great story. Yeah, I love it. I do want to talk actually one question before we get into your commentary portion in the interview about backing. It's a subject that doesn't get talked about too much necessarily. Obviously, staking, backing, that's been going on for decades, and many of the most successful poker players, even to this very day, still have backing or staking deals in place. There are a lot of folks like myself, like members of the CardsChat community, recreational players. We enjoy a good 1-2, maybe a 2-5, playing 3-figure, maybe a 4-figure tournament. But we sometimes say to ourselves, I'm good enough to play higher. Maybe obviously we're not, or maybe we are, but we're like, I just want that chance once. I would like to, give it a shot. But it's sometimes difficult to put, the money together. You're playing these low stakes and building it up and all that stuff. Would you recommend getting into a staking or a backing deal as a way to sort of take those shots from time to time for recreational players?
The honest answer is maybe. For some people I would, for some I wouldn't. There's absolutely nothing wrong. There should be no stigma around taking on a backing deal. In many cases, it's a very responsible business decision, especially for the player, because the player is, in many cases, essentially being free rolled. And it's like, hey, if you run good and you slam a tournament, then you're going to get a cut. Right. backing starts to actually be kind of a worse proposition as you get further along in your professional career. And it's like, hey, hopefully you are the one recouping most of the benefit of your working hours. So
Sure.
hopefully you are able to fund your own play. As a recreational player, backing can provide you a nice, safe avenue towards taking shots in larger events. The reason I say maybe is that sometimes if backing agreements are not, how to put it, discussed or negotiated with great detail and care, and maybe create some kind of physical record of confirmation, like a text exchange, okay, we're booked, or this and that, like,
Right.
they have the potential to go wrong. They have the potential to create a lot of friction in social relationships. If it's like, you know, a friend or a peer that's going to be backing you, there are just like ways that you know, money and friendship can go awry.
Right.
So just be mindful that, like, if you're going to get into a backing arrangement with somebody that you think this person has a very mature attitude towards gambling, which means they are professional about losing and watching you lose for a sustained period. If we're talking about tournament backing, it's totally normal to watch a horse lose for months or years.
Absolutely.
And it's pretty easy for a backer to start questioning whether this person is perhaps wasting their money, and that can create a lot of friction. So that's all I mean. I would say on the whole, it's incredibly normal for people to either have some kind of backing deal in place, especially when they take shots at higher stakes, or to just like sell action here or there when a bigger tournament comes along and they want to take a shot at it. And I think that's a very important and healthy part of the poker ecosystem. But when it comes to prolonged backing deals, make sure you get the details right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for really diving deep with the details there, because I know a lot of players, recreational players, you know, they don't necessarily know the ins and outs. They're not aware of the potential pitfalls. The idea, like you said, of getting some sort of a physical representation, even a contract or a signed agreement of some sort, it's only good for both parties, almost kind of like a prenup. In a way, you know, you're only protecting each other, and you can protect relationships that way. So thank you very much for that very insightful and important answer, you know, for those more ambitious among us. Let's shift gears a little bit. You got to do that in poker. You always got to shift gears from Tony the player to Tony the commentator. When you first started out with the WPT, you were hosting the Raw Deal segments. And of course, you've now been with Vince Van Patten as co-commentators for, I think, 3 years now. How did you begin working with the World Poker Tour at first?
They did an open casting call for the Raw Deal position back in 2010. And so a couple hundred people tried out, many of them in person at one of the WPT events in LA, some sent in tapes. In my case, I wasn't able to go to that WPT, and actually flew to LA to do more of like a private edition in their offices.
Nice.
Yeah, you know, it was just one of those random things that kind of came up suddenly. I had just moved back to the States after living in Australia. I wasn't really like planning to launch a career. I thought maybe I would get a poker sponsorship.
Right.
You know, but not really. I wasn't planning to work in television or entertainment or anything like that. But the opportunity came up, and I thought, oh, cool. This sounds like fun to at least go out for, and I could potentially be a good fit for that, considering my experience in poker and talking about it. So, like, hey, let's just swing for it.
Oh, awesome! I didn't know it's not even matter of fact, but that's pretty cool. You decided it could be interesting, and things worked out. Here we are a decade later. That's pretty nice.
Right.
Well, like you said, you never planned necessarily on being, you know, on television or anything like that, but you did study theater at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Do you think perhaps, like, the fact that you studied theater, maybe you gained some skills that gave you an advantage maybe during the audition, or gave you some sort of extra tools that you've been using on camera for the last 10 years?
Oh, 100%. Like, most of studying theater means coming to class and playing either improv games or acting out scenes or doing creative writing, all kinds of stuff that has been very relevant to my job with the WPT, writing and performing those segments when I was doing the Raw Deal, and just being able to keep the commentary flowing with Vince, even practicing your speaking voice for things like that. It's just a lot of training that became very applicable to working for the WPT. So yeah, like I said, that was great that it ended up working out that way. It just wasn't something I had really planned because
Right.
I was enjoying playing for a living. And, you know, especially when you're young, it's very easy to believe like this gravy train will just keep on forever. Like I'm sure nothing bad will happen to online poker. I'm sure it won't just suddenly disappear one night, you know,
Right.
in some kind of Black Friday-esque event, you know.
Right. Well, thankfully, I guess you had that gig before Black Friday even kicked in. Like that was already.
Yeah, that's about 6 months before.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
And
Goodness.
otherwise I would have been making a decision after Black Friday about, okay, you know, do I relocate from the United States? Do I move to Canada and Mexico like so many of my peers did?
Right.
Do I take a completely different path in life from poker? Because it's not like I was completely killing it back then and a bunch of my money got locked up. So it was kind of like, oh crap, you know, is this what I still do for a living?
Right.
But yeah, having the WPT there made it so that there was much stronger incentive to push through that time in poker and make a new way for it to work.
For sure. And I got to say, I just, you know, for the audience to realize this, you know, whether you're listening or whether you're watching, I've interviewed tons of poker players before, tons of people before in general, and it's not such a given that you get someone on the other end of the microphone like Tony Dunst. You know, you talked about having a natural speaking voice, and obviously you performed on camera, not, you know, being facetious or, you know, extra complimentary. It just really is the truth. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you, and you're giving fantastic answers, speaking with poise, very eloquently, and, you know, eye contact, the whole deal. It's not such a given, and you know, you make it look pretty easy. So more power to you, man.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, you know, after 10 years of the WPT, there's been plenty of practice, and
Sure.
I feel super lucky to have landed in a place where so many of the things that I grew up enjoying, practicing, or found interesting mesh together, like getting to talk about poker and hang out with the fun people that I work with, and then go play serious poker and every now and then try and play my way into one of our televised final tables is just, yeah, a great harmony for me.
Awesome. Is there something that you could maybe pinpoint as something that you like, your favorite thing about working for and with the World Poker Tour?
My favorite thing is the social balance it provides as opposed to playing for a living. Because when you play poker for a living, it's really easy to get into an introverted or almost an antisocial rut, especially if you're playing online and just like hanging out, playing poker all the time, or even if you're going to the casino and playing tournaments. You're seeing other people, and don't get me wrong, you're talking on the table and everything, but it's not quite a natural social life. Whereas at work, there's so much of what we do is focused and centralized around hanging out with people, spending time together, doing collaborative things. And yeah, just having that side of the coin available to me makes playing that much easier, because it's not like, oh, here we are, another day grinding at the table. It's kind of like this flipping back and forth between the two. So working with the WPT provides a lot of balance to my life.
Awesome. And of course, you know, just a great bunch of people. I've met, I don't think all, but most of you guys, and you're just a wonderful bunch of people to work with. They talk about the WPT family. That's not just the name. That's the real deal. It's the real thing. What's going to ask you? Oh, right. So in poker, you know, when you're a professional poker player, and you talked about it as well, you're always studying, you're always improving. In a sense, also, that's with any job. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get. What would you say, you know, in what way, perhaps, are you better now as a commentator, as an on-camera personality than when you first started out 10 years ago?
I like to think so, and it would be hard, you know, not to be after so much practice and being, you know, refined by your producers, having conversations about what's landing and resonating with the audience and what's not, learning more about presentation skills. For example, at one point when I was promoted to the desk with Vince, the WPT hired media professionals to train me in, you know, speaking engagements, things like that. So all of that practice just adds up over the years. And I also think that being another 10 years into my playing career, not only am I more seasoned, but I am more measured in the way I think and speak about the game. Like when I was 25, I had a young man's level of certainty. I was like, okay, well, this is the standard play, and this is what you've got to do, and that, and this and that, and like, oh, what are you doing here? And now, older, I've come to think that in so many different situations in poker, and this is quite apparent if you even do like PIO studying, look at machine learning, things like that, the strategy is mixed. And so there's always a lot of pretty viable reasons to make a play. There are, of course, some exceptions where it's just like, bro, what are you doing? Don't get me wrong. There are still some absolutes, but like there are so many situations in poker where the choice that you made, there are pretty viable reasons for why you could have done that, or strategic reasons for why you could have done that. And so the way that I speak about the game is, I think, a lot more measured than when I started.
I like that. That's an answer that resonates with me in a way. And not that I'm doing the same thing you are, but again, I've been doing what I'm doing for a while. And I also look back sometimes, I say, okay, back in my 20s, okay, I knew what I was doing, and I was obviously professional and mature and all these sorts of things. But now, 38 years old, I look back and it's like, oh, I can do that a lot better now. Just like you said, with experience, you just have seen so much more that you can look at it through a much more experienced prism. You mentioned that you had media professionals come and train you, and obviously the WP likes to promote WPT, likes to promote from within. Of course, we'd be remiss. We have to mention the late Mike Sexton. Those are the shoes you had to fill. It's not a simple thing. Of course, no one asked you to fill Mike's shoes. Actually, you can't be Mike. He was himself, and you've got to be Tony. I do wonder, though, when he decided to sort of step away and move into more of the party poker role, did he sort of give you like a pep talk or something like that, or give you some tips or tricks, because you obviously had been part of the WPT for a while, you guys had been close. So was there some sort of like a passing of the torch type of lesson that he gave you?
I would say he gave me encouragement, but he was not the kind of guy that told people how to like do their jobs or how to do their thing. He just kind of had faith in the people around him that they knew not their place. They knew how to be in that role. He really trusted us, as it were. There was a night at Tiger Jam in WPT, the WPT does every year. And, we just kind of spoke a lot that night. That's when the news is kind of made official. And, he just really, like I said, provided a lot of encouragement and said, I'm sure you're going to do great in that role, that you're going to take care of Vince for me, keep an eye on him, that kind of thing. And the cool thing was, even though Mike stepped away in his official role, from the desk in WPT, he was very much around the WPT for the years that followed that, playing a ton of our events. We've had various partnerships with Party Poker where he remained chairman following his departure. And so in a lot of ways, it didn't feel like there was just this like sudden absence of this enormous personality. He was very much still there, but, he was not at the desk with Vince. He would drop down.
Gotcha. Right, I hear you. And like, with all of the tributes that poured in after Mike's passing, I have to hear it again. I know I heard it before. Maybe I'm even a little rusty on the details. When you first met Mike way back in, I think, the mid-2000s, you were a little bit inebriated at a party, I believe.
I was double fisting beers. I remember that detail. And like I said, the first trip I ever went on was to Australia. It was to this event. Mike was working for Party Poker all the way back then. And, was functioning in much the same role as like the host, welcomer of new players, ambassador to poker, same kind of thing. And they did a players party. And I had busted out of the event I went deepest in kind of a like marginal spot where I just called off a bunch of chips on a huge draw or something. And I just, I was feeling terrible about it, which is so odd to me now. Like I'm 20 years into my career, and if I lose some big poker hand, I'm like, what are you gonna do? I guess just, and like back then I was heartbroken. I was, like it was just aching. And I was like, oh, Mike Sexton will know what to do. And, went up and accosted him with his hand history that was bordering on bad beat story. And, You know, he listened very patiently, gave me his advice about the hand, super nice, the whole 9 yards.
Unbelievable. That's great. I'm just picturing the scene. It's just such a funny picture. And then kudos to him also, like what everyone always spoke to. He was always had time for everybody, you know, whether they were just coming up and approaching him as a, you know, fellow professional and as a colleague, you know, his age, or, you know, someone double fisting and clearly, you know, inebriated.
Yeah, you know,
yeah.
What a big part of what I loved about Mike in that role and as a person was how happy he was to see the next generations of poker picking up the game and evolving the game and things like that. There was definitely from, I would say, like the 03 to approaching 2010 era in poker commentary and poker media, there was at times a sort of dismissive tone towards the way the young players approached poker.
Sure.
Oh, these kids always going all in with their ace king, like they'll never get it. Whereas Mike always welcomed the next generation, always kind of like believed in us collectively, always figured like, well, they're just playing with computers all the time and figuring these things out, you know, they're going to be tough, you know, like,
right.
he really saw the future super well.
Awesome. Well, that brings me very close to the end of my questions, but I do have a few rapid fire ones before we get into the community questions from the Cards Chat members on the forum. So just a little bit of a rapid fire here, get some last few nuggets here before we get to the community questions. So our lightning round, we got 4 little questions here. Tony, what is your favorite thing to spend money on?
Appreciating essence.
Ooh, good answer. Who are the friendliest players you've enjoyed sitting at the tables with?
My all-time number 1 is Lucky Chewy. Remains a good friend to this day, but
Andrew Lichtenberger, right?
Super nice guy, very friendly guy on the table. He'd be serious too on the days that we're playing a big event or something, but such a nice guy. And there's just a bunch of like good dudes that I always see and have really solid conversations with around the poker community over the years. Guys like Jeremy Ausmus, Matt Moore. Yeah, I've been around forever, man. There's just way too many. Who are the friendliest ones? There's to hell with the poker player reputation. There's a whole bunch of nice ones.
Beautiful. Great answer. You're a big sports fan, as you mentioned, but for a long time, obviously during the beginning stages of this pandemic, there were no sports being played, no sports to watch. Did you watch and or bet on marble racing?
No, Mike McDonald was touting that for a while. He was trying to get people into it. I think Poker Shares was offering lines on it.
Right.
To me, it honestly seemed, how to put it, terrible. Like it's just watching inanimate objects completely randomized dropping down the thing. Like I don't know how to put it. It would be like just drawing a number out of a hat. Here it is. There it is. That's contest decided. You know, like.
But they're so good. The yellow's marble racing. It's good. It's fun to watch.
I feel like a hater. I don't want to be a hater. If you enjoy marble racing, knock yourself out. It just seems like redundant.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 100, how excited are you that Las Vegas now has both an NHL and an NFL franchise?
Pretty damn excited. I mean, I guess 100 would be like, I don't know, if we somehow got the Packers. That doesn't make sense because I don't want them to leave Wisconsin either, but they're my team, so that's the only way I could reach like 100 if we could fuse the two somehow. But I think it's awesome that Vegas has an NHL and an NFL team. I would love to see the other major sports come here, particularly the NBA, because I just think when you see the energy and interest around Summer League here every, like late June, early July, it's hard not to think this city couldn't support an NBA team. And I've just become a huge fan of the league and the sport of basketball. I just think that all of these major franchises coming to Vegas are going to be huge for the city. Attracting people week after week, good for real estate prices, good for business, good for just a lot of different stuff. It's going to be great.
Awesome. And my last question here, it's actually from my buddy Mike, so thanks a lot, Mike. When he heard I was interviewing you, he said, oh, well, Tony's from Wisconsin, so you have to ask him, has he ever had Kopp's Burgers and Custard And if so, have you ever discussed that food with your fellow Wisconsinite and WPT team member, Phil Hellmuth?
I've never discussed it with Phil Hellmuth, but I have had Cops ice cream, and it's really good. I am unfortunately now later in life lactose intolerant and cannot enjoy it anymore. But back in the day when I was young and invincible, we would go for Cops every time I was in Milwaukee with my family, and their ice cream is super good. I even remember very distinctively the way it like slowly comes out of these giant machines they have it churn out of. It's so damn good. But yeah, you know, if you're ever in Wisconsin, Robbie, you know the ice cream you should go for.
Awesome. And this episode is brought to you by No, I'm just kidding. But thank you. Okay, so this is the segment of our show now. We turn to the Cards Chat community to see what questions you guys wanted to ask our guests. And the first community member is Shells. Thank you very much. Shells has been a frequent contributor and submitter of questions. Shells asks, Tony, given that you had studied theater before taking up a career in poker, tell us your most memorable theatrical performance on or off the felt.
Theatrical performance on or off the felt. We do a roast every year at the WPT, and we're not allowed to like film it or put anything on social media so that people can really take the gloves off. And the year that we roasted Phil Hellmuth, I think I was especially on point. And so I cherish that memory.
Beautiful. I love it. And I attended the Vince Van Patten roast, and it is really a cool experience. That's awesome. Our next question submitter for member is Belladonna05. Thank you. What do you do, Tony, to prepare for tournaments with huge fields? How do you counter the physical and mental fatigue that the long hours can bring?
The short answer is caffeine. I drink coffee.
Okay.
You know, and as far as what do I do for preparation, it's more like a steady diet of studying instead of trying to load up at any one particular time or feeling nerves before a big tournament and being like, oh no, I gotta really be on it today. Like, I just put in my time during the week. You know, oftentimes I probably most weeks put in 3 to 5 hours of study spread out. Mostly I have a session during some weekdays where I watch videos or I study my own hand histories. Sometimes I go to sleep watching, you know, poker training videos, things like that. But it's instead of trying to like go crazy at any one particular time, it's just like, cool, I'm just going to always keep up on it. I'm always going to stay moderately sharp. We'll be in.
Right. That kind of dovetails. You kind of like semi-answered this question from our next community member, Coin Us, I guess. How much time do you spend per day or per week studying, and how many hours do you play per week? I would just sort of refine that a little based on your answer. Is that consistent, or does it sort of vary based on how much poker you're going to be playing, or like you're entering a big tournament or something?
Yeah, that's a good addition to the question because it varies depending on when I'm going to be playing a ton. If I'm playing a ton, then I actually want to complement my play with study, so it feels like my mind is always primed for poker. So take the series they ran this summer, I pretty much just like, you know, I said, I woke up, I got my exercise, and then I like ran solves for 45 minutes, 30 minutes, did my solve, whatever my like set amount was for the day, you know, watch a training video, review my own session, put about like 90 minutes in a day, and then play the session. And so there was a much heavier dose of studying during these long playing times. Whereas if there's going to be a stretch where there's no major tournaments to play, I don't feel like I need to be so dialed in. I don't feel like I need to know exactly what I'm doing in every little spot all the time if I'm not going to be applying it.
Sure. No, that's fair. It totally makes sense as well. You know, marathon runners also aren't just, you know, running the 30K, every single night for sure.
Exactly.
CRS Talls, Chris Talls, I guess, asks 2 questions from this forum contributor. What do you like to do better, Tony? Play poker or broadcast and commentate on poker?
I get that question a lot, actually. And the truth, and not a total cop-out, is that I really enjoy the balance of having both. And it's been so long since I've only done one. Like, I've never only done commentary, and it's now been 10 plus years since I've only done poker. And so I don't really know what that's like anymore. It's just become the two together at all times. And I really do like the balance that it provides, because poker, when you go through losing streaks or just the various things that can be very frustrating about the game, it can be tough to try and push yourself day after day to get back in there and to look forward to it. It can be something that you sort of like casually dread when it's your obligation to play all the time. And I would think any job that you have to perform, if you have to do it all the time, it would gradually reach the same. And what makes me very lucky in the role that I have in the poker community is that the WPT, it is it's a decent sized position in terms of obligation, but it's not like a strict traditional 9 to 5. And that's going to consume most of your working hours. It's something that I get to do that complements my playing for a living in a very natural way. And every now and then I just need to like take tournaments off or take time off from poker to prioritize work things or work events, and that's totally fine. And that just keeps a much better harmony in my life than just trying to do one all the time. Like I think sometimes, what if poker dried up and I was just a commentator? I'm like, oh crap. And then I think, well, what if I got fired from my job and I decided to play poker all the time? Like, damn it. Like, ooh, I don't want to do that. So like, I know it's kind of a cop-out, but both.
Oh, very much not a cop. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not a cop-out because you really, you explained your reasoning. Like when I was in grade school, they always said, don't just give me the answer to the math problem, prove your work. And it wasn't a cop-out at all. It's a good justification. Also, the second question from Crystals, what was the most awkward thing you have ever seen at a WPT event?
That's a good question. Most awkward. Justin Young, like tearing his ACL or whatever the hell it was. I didn't physically witness that one, but it's an incredibly awkward and random event. Like he's like jumping up and down to celebrate. Not doing anything terribly risky, it would look like. And just kind of like tears his ACL and is now in physical pain to the rest of the final table. And nobody really knew what to make of it. That was very awkward. The time that Phil Hellmuth took a bad beat and then like curled up in the fetal position next to the table, that was very awkward. The time that dude got insanely drunk and then blew a 25-1 lead to Olivier Bousquet. He was just like, oh man, I got this locked up, and he got wasted and then just blew it. Pretty damn awkward. So, those are 3 good answers.
Absolutely. Just 2 more questions before we wrap it up. We had a lot of questions submitted. We just chose some of the more interesting ones from our community. From Igro Shash, I hope I pronounced that right, from our community member. Which live tournament are you planning? We're at the end of October now, just so we're dating it here, 2020. Which live tournament are you planning to participate in the near future?
I'm sorry, but the honest answer is I have no idea. I hope live poker comes back. I hope that we as a country and we as a planet get a handle on this pandemic in such a way that makes it safe to resume all of our normal businesses and, congregation in events like live poker tournaments. But right now, I don't know which casinos are ready to start launching live poker tournaments in the not too distant future. And so I just don't have a good answer to that.
Totally fair. I get it. And and we wouldn't commit you to it, if you said a particular one. All good. And our last community question comes from Freddie DR87. And this sort of harkens back to something that you said earlier about how you have more experience as a player and a commentator. Curious to hear your answer here. How do you feel or think when you are broadcasting and you're analyzing hand in progress and you say, okay, this is an easy fold, or you say, it would be hard for him to fold this hand. And then the player ends up doing exactly the opposite of what you said that they're more likely to do. How do you feel?
How do I feel? If the play works out, I feel very impressed. And if the play doesn't work out, I'm like, I told you so.
Great answer. I love it. I love it. And that's, I guess, love it is a description we can apply to this entire hour of conversation. Thank you, everyone who sent in questions for Tony Dunst. And just a friendly reminder to everyone out there in the Cards Chat community, we'd love to see you guys submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forums. And of course, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels if you like the show. Tony, thank you again very, very much for joining me today. I appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of Cards Chat. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter @CardPlayerLife. Guys, have a wonderful day.